Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Followers of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Networking Group, the professional network for creative individuals in all creative industries anywhere throughout the globe. Together, we help you to connect, create, grow and develop your creative business together. But this is On the Couch. So Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, today we have author Darren Walker, whose novels have been described as fantasy comedy or comedy fantasy, and whichever genre you're talking about. Suffice to say that Darren is a very imaginative and a very funny man. So let's get him on the couch. Hello, Darren.
Hello, guys. Thanks for having me.
Lovely to see you. Well, you've written two books so far, Closing Shop and The Sword of Uncreation, and your third book is just about to be published or has been published, called Dead Gods. So first of all, how do you describe your particular genre? Is it fantasy, comedy, fantasy? What is it?
I call it comedy fantasy, and basically it's my silly imagination allowed to run riot on paper.
So give us a rundown of the plot. Obviously, don't go into too much detail because you want people to buy the books.
Sure.
So start off with Closing Shop. That was your first novel. What's that about?
It's with lots of angels and demons set in hell and heaven, and Satan gets bored being in charge there, and he longs for the old days. So he sets up a peace conference with God on a Hawaiian island in the hope that he'll be allowed back into heaven. But unfortunately, because neither side trust each other, things go a little bit wrong.
Okay, and The Sword of Uncreation?
Again, a lot of my books are my stories of having the same sort of characters. So again, angels and demons. And in the days of the first apocalypse war, God creates a sword that is so deadly that instead of angels and demons being killed in battle and going back to heaven and hell, it just destroys their souls completely. And it's so powerful that he hides it on earth so that not even he knows where it is. But Satan manages to find out where it is. So there's a massive race to get to it. And there's a final battle on Ilkley Moor in England. And it involves the angel souls of Jimi Hendrix and Miles Davis as well. So it's weird but fun.
So what first drew you to the idea of angels and demons?
Well, I'm a massive Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams fan, and I used to write articles for an American arts website. It'd be a mixture of serious stuff and a comedic look at the difference between Britain and America. And that website closed down, and thought I had the muse in my whispering in my ear saying, right, and I just didn't want to do a blog or anything like that. So I thought I'll write a novel, and I tried to do a serious thriller, and I just can't do serious. So I thought, right, I'll do a comedy. And I thought, right, what do I like? And I thought, Terry Pratchett has his Discworld novels set in this fantasy world where he's got orcs and dwarves and things like that. So it's a bit like Tolkien if Tolkien did comedies. And I thought, well, he set up the background histories and geography and places for his stories. So I wanted to do the same, and I thought, well, what would be interesting, but it also gives you lots of comedic opportunities. And I thought, well, angels and demons, and they can certainly, when they get together, they can cause lots of trouble. So I started writing the first novel, and I just enjoyed it so much. So while I was looking for a publisher or an agent, I wrote 4 other books in the series. So my next book isn't the one I've finished with. I've got 10 more waiting to be published, but I kept going back to the first book and adding little Easter eggs that link to the next four books in the series. So there's sort of lots of interconnectivity, and I just enjoy that theme.
And the third book, did you say it's going to be published or it has been published?
I'm planning to get it self-published. The other two were published by a publisher, but I've decided to give self-publishing a try, and I'm hoping to get it out this month. It's called Dead Gods.
And what is that? Also angels and demons?
Yes, it's where a student in Boulder in Colorado gets bored, so he starts to worship some gods that have long since ceased to exist, and then he brings them back into reality, and they start causing lots of trouble, and so God and Satan have to join forces to fight them in a massive battle in South America.
Like, be gone, you fictional gods.
Oh, well, yeah, but unfortunately, it's a very physical war that they have to actually get rid of them. But there's a twist in the story as to how it's done. Spoiler, you'll have to buy the book to see it here.
So being a published author through a publisher, why did you decide, or why are you deciding to now go down the self-publishing route?
Well, unless you're a massive well-known author or a celebrity, most big publishing companies don't want to know. They don't want to risk an unknown entity. And so I found a small publishing company. I mean, they were really helpful and friendly, but unfortunately, they took the lion's share of royalties, so that I was just getting a pittance for each book sold. And they didn't have the budget or the money just to promote an author over and above the initial sort of book launch and saying, oh, this is the latest book from our range, as it were. So I thought, well, if I'm going to go out there and do my own marketing anyway, I may as well have a go at self-publishing and see if I can get a little bit more money out of it than the conventional publisher route.
Yeah, makes sense.
I mean, I won't say anything bad against the publisher. I mean, they're really friendly and helpful, but unfortunately, just after the initial push, it was all the marketing was down to me. So if I'm doing all the marketing myself, I may as well reap a little bit more benefit from doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. It is tough. It is tough. And I wish that some of the bigger publishers would take a little bit more risk. I mean, J.K. Rowling's a prime example. You know, she got published by a small publisher who took a risk. J.K. Rowling is extraordinarily business savvy, and I think it put the building blocks in place once it got popular. And she's built a complete empire off it. And I just wonder, with some publishers being so snobby, for want of a better word, how much revenue are they missing out on? Because there's a lot of talent out there. You know, how many J.K. Rowlings are slipping through the net because, that you're not a famous person? Makes me wonder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was looking for a publisher, I got a really thick book, and it was a guide to all the publishers that are out there and the different genres that they specialize in and things like that. And I contacted dozens and dozens and dozens of them, and they all came back saying, oh, well, we're not looking at your genre in the market, and the thing is, so if there were vampires were the trendy thing, they'd have been looking for vampire authors and things like that. But if you're sort of just trying to create your own stories and it's not trendy, they just don't want to know.
But again, it makes me smile, because fantasy fiction, all the things that have hit the mainstream through fantasy fiction, like Terry Pratchett's Good Omens did fairly well on the television, and in book sales. And you've got the fantasy series like Game of Thrones, and you know, the Tolkien series, which was done fabulously by, I think, Wingnut Films in New Zealand. They've created those fantastic epics. Now I think Warner Brothers are going to try and recreate all of that, because, again, lazy in my view. It's like, we've done it really, really well. You can't really better what they've done, so why would you bother with it? But anyway, there is an appetite and there is a market for it. So any publisher out there, no, we don't do fantasy. Yeah. I'm sorry, but you're missing a trick, because people actually like fantasy. People want escapism. They want to get away to a world where they can just slip into the fantasy. And I think that it's a big mistake.
Yeah. But I mean, they just want big names. So if it's people like David Williams or some royal member of the royal family sort of saying, "Oh, don't look at me, but just look at me while you're not looking at me," kind of thing. But if it's just Joe Blogs with a good story that's entertaining but is a nobody, then they don't want to know. And
I find that extraordinary because, as Melanie said, you know, they want to make more J.R.R. Tolkien type of Lord of the Rings epic movies. We've seen it all. I don't know about you. I've read all the books. I've seen all the movies. I don't want any more. It's exhausting. I want something new. So they've got the budget. They've got the money. Why aren't they looking for authors like you that are just waiting to be discovered?
I think because they're so risk averse, so they'll refilm a movie that was successful and they'll reimagine the beginning. So how many rebirths of Spider-Man films have there been? And there'll be a new rebirth of James Bond whenever they decide on the actor, and the Godzilla film, they had to restart that franchise and things like that. So they just go back for money for old ropes rather than sort of thinking, well, let's find something that's new and put that out there. But
exactly, and I do think it's lazy. It's like, okay, yeah, you can rehash and rehash and rehash, and okay, yeah, you'll make your money back, maybe a bit over the top because people are bored with it, excuse my French, but you could have a next smash hit on your hands that could give birth to a whole new franchise and a whole new billions, but you're not prepared to do it because all hasn't been done before. It's like, you know, I wish Hollywood, or even in the UK, you know, we're a big producer of content now. Somebody, for crying out loud, take a bloody risk. You know, what happened to the real old school people that when they kicked off all these things and put these stuff into production? You know, the Spielbergs who did, you know, Jurassic Park, and James Cameron with Avatar and things that were new. You know, why aren't we getting that new stuff? And people keep banging on about, oh, we must have new talent, let's encourage new writers, let's do. Well, you're not encouraging new writers because you're not publishing their fucking stuff.
Yeah.
My friend, getting really cross on your behalf, Darren. Really cross.
It's not just on Darren's behalf. I bang on about this a lot. It's like, don't encourage youngsters into the bloody industry when you're just going to tear them down and say, oh no, well, you're not doing Spider-Man, so we're not doing that. Oh, you've got fantasy, and no, we're not doing that. Oh, we're not doing, you know, take a bloody risk.
They are. I know people like the Marvel movies. People love that kind of stuff. I liked comics as a kid, and I loved Superman. I liked Spider-Man. When I saw the first Superman movie, it was, oh wow, because remember they made him fly. And then the first Spider-Man movie, and then after that I've had enough. I've been there, done that. And what are they on? You were talking about Spider-Man earlier, Darren. What are they on? Movie number 7 or 8 or?
I've lost count because they did I forget the name of the actors, but they did a trilogy with one actor, and then they rejigged it with Tom Holland or someone Holland, and then I think they're on the third actor now, and it's just rejigging it, and you're just thinking it's money for old rope, and just find something new.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it's still selling though. They wouldn't make it if it wasn't selling.
Oh yeah, it will sell. It will cover their costs. It will make some over the top. But I still think they're missing huge opportunities with not looking at new stuff. And what really gets my goat is when production companies like Disney regurgitate things like Snow White and put, oh, we'll have a Latino Snow White because that's diverse. Tick. No, I don't want to see a Latino Snow White. Snow White was Snow White. The clue's in the fucking name. You know, it's done. It's done. There are loads of Latino stories and Afro Caribbean American stories of some tremendous people who have got great stories, of fantastic to put on the screen, where you could put a fantastically diverse cast and crew in place. Tell those stories because people actually do want to hear them. You know, okay, I'm a white person, but I would love to see a new strong story with a person of color in a lead that is a true story about overcoming adversity.
There are so many stories coming out of Africa.
Well, I mean,
there are so many stories coming out of Africa, and they're just being ignored.
Well, I mean, they can do it. I mean, look at 12 Years a Slave. That was a magnificent film. And so they don't have to shoehorn people of color into what is traditionally Anglo-Saxon character or whatever. Don't try and rewrite history. Don't try rewriting a story. Get them to create their own stories, and that is, to me, that's more integration and social awareness than sort of trying to rewrite
Absolutely.
history.
But the nice thing about angels and demons is that they can be green or purple.
Oh, a lot of mine are, but I mean, in my novels, I've had God being a woman, being a 10-year-old child, being a black Messiah warrior. It's basically God can be whoever you want him to be and whatever you believe. So he can choose his character, his shape, and his form for the believers. And Satan is sort of this. He can take on human form with a sort of goatee beard and things like that. But when he wants to be, he can be this big red horned creature that eviscerates people with his horns whenever he wants to. So it's I've got, when you're doing fantasy, you can just make it up as you go along.
But you're still referring to God as he.
That's because it's the way I've always seen God. But if people want to see him as, or see God as a woman, then in my novels he does appear as female in some of them as well. So I don't sort of stereotype him too much. I mean, in the first novel, he looks more like Colonel Sanders than any sort of long-robed, long-bearded guy. He's just, but it was sort of, I did that deliberately because it was sort of based on the owner of the American website where I first started writing. He just looked like he should be selling Kentucky Fried Chicken. So I just made that character look like that, and if he was speaking, he'd probably sound like Foghorn Leghorn. So it's just the way it is.
How do you actually write? Because every author has some way of writing. They either write for 3 months and then nothing for 9 months, and then, or they have a set routine. A lot of writers say you need to have a set routine. What's your routine for writing?
I don't have a routine. It's just when I've got the time and the motivation. I mean, I've got so many stories bouncing about in my head, and I can start writing a novel, and the ideas and the plot development and the storyline are so fast that I find it hard to keep up with typing, to keep up with the storyline in my head. But I don't force myself and say, oh, it's 8 o'clock at night, I'm going to sit down, switch off Facebook and write for 2 hours solid. Because to me, if you haven't got the story in your head, or if you're not in the mood and you force yourself, it doesn't work on the paper, and the people reading it can tell. So I just do right when I've got in the mood, and if I'm not in the mood, or if I don't have the time or the inclination, I don't worry. I don't lose any sleep about it, because I don't have any publisher saying, well, your next book's due in June, finish writing this story. It's a case of I write because I enjoy writing, and everything else is extra to it. I find the publishing process, learning the self-publishing thing is interesting, but it's not as enjoyable as writing. So that's why I've got 10 more books waiting, and I'm sort of halfway through the 11th book to be in the queue. So I just write when I feel like it. And sometimes when I do the plot structures, I will sort of do a brief chapter synopsis. So chapter 1, the hero does this, chapter 2, the villain does that. But when I'm writing, many a time I'll just add extra chapters in there that weren't planned, because my imagination will just, oh, well, what happens if he goes off and does that? And it's sort of just, in a sense, I plan to make it up as I go along, if that's not a paradox.
Do you have an editor?
Do your characters tend to, oh, sorry, Melanie. Do your characters tend to take off and do their own thing without you realizing that, or not planning it?
Yeah, they do evolve up from book to book. So originally, one of the characters was called Roxy, who was actually based on somebody I knew, and they're an angel, and they're sort of, the way they die and their backstory is actually based on the real person, even though they're not dead, but their history is based on them. And the character started acting as if how I imagined my friend would do it in that situation. But as the books have developed, that person has sort of evolved into their own individual person that is so far away from the real Roxy that you wouldn't recognize them if they were both in the same room. But I do sort of have characters, and I do plan them out, and I do think in my head, right, if that is that person, they will do this. But once I start writing, they will get their own personality, and what I sometimes planned that they would do, they do it slightly different to what I originally thought, because I thought, no, actually that character, let's see what happens if he does that, and it works out better when they do it differently in their own personality rather than Darren imposing Darren's personality into a different character.
Do you have an editor, Darren?
Yes, I've got somebody in America who does it. I've had trial and errors with some of the editors in the past, and they've been a bit hit and miss, but I've got someone in America, and she is a true pedant, and she doesn't let me get away with anything. And the number of things she comes back and corrects them, and I've sort of sometimes you'll read your own work and you think, oh, that looks good, and then someone will says, well, what about that? And you look back and go, how did I miss that? But sometimes you're blind to your own mistakes. Plus, in one of my novels, I wrote about how to treat a jaguar pelt, and so it's sort of, even though it's a comedy, they have to unfortunately kill this animal before it sort of kills them, and I sort of write about how it's skinned and treated, and she's saying, because she's from Alabama, she says, you don't do it like that, and if you did it like that, it stinks. And so I'm going to have to rewrite the entire chapter so that it's actually accurate, because sometimes you read something, you do your research online, and it's like, oh, I'll do it that way, and it's like, no, in reality you actually have to do it that way. But, right, okay, fine. So in a sense, she gives me more than I pay for with her.
So you obviously haven't skinned many jaguars in your life then, Darren.
No, not really. You don't see that many in Leeds, so it's and I've skinned a rabbit, but I've never tried to treat the pelt.
So where can people buy your books if they're interested in what you've been saying so far?
Mainly Amazon. It's available, and I'm sure most people can get onto Amazon and buy books, so they're on there.
Brilliant. And the details will be going across the screen now as well.
And they can follow you on Facebook and LinkedIn and any other social media platforms?
I'm on Twitter. I've also got my own webpage, Darren Walker Author. So please join me and say hello. I'm on Facebook as Darren Walker Author, but I've also got the Facebook group Closing Shop. So please feel free to come along and say hello. I occasionally post joke memes on my page as well. So if you need cheering up, come and have a look.
Actually, Darren, you make me laugh every day.
Thank you. I try to. Laughter beats the alternative, doesn't it? You've got to laugh.
You're one of those people that I don't know what it is about you, but you post such amazing stuff, and I always laugh at them, always, and you always raise my spirits. So you're a wonderful person to have in my life, I'll tell you that.
Such, thank you.
So what are your top 3 tips for aspiring authors or people who want to write fantasies or comedies?
I think the first one is probably, maybe it's a little bit cliched. I mean, a lot of people say, oh, write what you know. And I disagree with that. And I'd say, write what you want to read. If you are writing something and you enjoy what you're writing, and you go back and you read it and you say, oh, that's really good, whether you're writing a thriller and thought, oh, that's good, or if it's a comedy and you go back to it 3 weeks later and you're laughing at your own jokes, then you're enjoying what you're doing. So enjoy what you're doing, because if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then it will show. As I said before, the readers will think it's a chore to read it. So just enjoy what you do and write what you want to read.
And number 2?
think this is a bit more complex, but if you want to write, analyze other people's styles. So if you have a favorite genre, read what they do and how they do it. Don't plagiarize it. So don't get too in depth into the story and the characters, but see how they develop the characters, how they link the chapters together. Do they have each chapter end with a sort of cliffhanger, so you've got to carry on reading, or does each chapter end and then it's someone else's chapter actions and it goes back to the other person? So how do they keep you enthralled in the book? How do they keep you wanting to read more and learn from that? And I mean, sometimes I do it and I'm watching a television program and I'll be analyzing how each scene links to each other as if it was a book chapter. And then I found that the film's finished and I've actually not really watched the film because I've been too busy looking at the structure to see how it works.
And the last one?
I'd say don't worry about your readership. If they want to read it, they will come. You may not be the next Dan Brown or the J.K. Rowling, but be the next yourself. And enjoy writing, and you'll find your own readership. When I first started writing for the American Arts website, I used to write random stuff about the Sex Pistols or Monty Python or Rosa Parks or self-harm. But when I first got the first feedback and people started asking me for signed photographs, I was blown away by it, because thinking people are actually reading this and they're enjoying it and I'm getting positive feedback. And then when I got my books published, people started to write reviews on Amazon, which is hard enough to get in the first place, because people say, oh yeah, we'll write reviews, and they never do. But you're seeing these 5-star reviews and you think, fantastic. And then you sort of get people on Facebook commenting and they're saying, when's your next book going to come out? And, oh, you're my favorite author. When someone said that to me, I was blown away by it. It was amazing. So don't try and worry and think, oh, my authors, my readers, I'm going to write this, so I'm going to grab this group of readers. Just write for yourself, enjoy it, and that you'll find your readership.
So what exactly do you, besides Angels and Demons, you said you've written another 11 books. Is it all Angels and Demons?
No, I've got one that is called The Lords of Nowhere, and that's a comedy set in a fictional South American country. It's a bit like an updated Ealing comedy. And when I was writing it, usually I have the sort of set characters in there, and one of them's usually based on me. But this time I was writing it, and the central character, I was writing it, I'm thinking that'd be ideal for Martin Freeman. And it was just, it wasn't deliberate, but the mannerisms, the way of speaking, and the sort of the way he puts himself across, I thought that'd be ideal for him. So if you're out there, Martin,
you never know who's lurking in the background.
No, that's available. Then I've also written 2 medieval fantasies full of dragons and ogres. It was originally meant to be a young adult novel, but with my sense of humor, it's hard to tell whether it's for young adults or just immature adults with my sense of humor. And so I'm on the third book of that. So I like to write different genres as well, and they always tend to be comedies.
Yeah, I don't think you can cut your humor out of it. I don't think so.
Well, I mean, I did write serious articles with the American Arts website, so I can actually do it. But when I try doing it as a thriller, I just end up doing a fart joke in there or something like that, because this is a bit too serious and intense. Oh, right, okay, a bit of comedy in there. And it's sort of, I mean, I am planning to write a really dark comedy about suicide, which sort of, you think, how the hell do I get comedy in there? So it will be dark and things like that, but it's trying to get the balance right so that I can put a powerful message across about depression and self-harm and suicide, but make it entertaining so people will want to read it, so it's not just some gloom and doom, depressing thing.
Okay, we shall watch out for that. But we are at the point in our show where we'll be playing this damn game.
Okay, this is going to be fun.
My cards, my precious cards that I love.
My precious.
My precious, my precious. Okie dokie. Right, Darren, I'm going to run my finger. I'll spread them out, hopefully. Hopefully you can see them. And I'm going to put my finger on the top, and you just stop when you want me to pick a card.
Stop.
Right, let's have a look. What have we got? Oh, we've got loyalty.
Right.
Okay, we've pulled the loyalty card. Our values don't go. So obviously being creative, we're going to ask you creatively about what loyalty means to you. So Darren, what does loyalty mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
Well, loyalty is very subjective, and sometimes people think they are being loyal when they're stabbing you in the back. So it's a hard thing to quantify, because you give people trust, and trust is easily broken and it's hard to replace and repair. So to me, it's friendship, honesty, and I want to use the word not pissing up my back, but obviously I don't want to use that expression. But basically, but if someone wants to criticize me, then I don't mind it. But let's have an argument, let's have a debate, let's have a discussion. Or, I mean, friends will tell you you're an idiot. True friends will tell you you're a total, complete idiot, and we'll laugh and we'll carry on. So that, to me, being able to be open and honest is the best form of loyalty out there. And I would embrace anybody who gives me that, as long as I don't have a knife in the other hand and stabbing me in the back while they're hugging me.
Yeah, exactly. What does it feel like, do you think?
It's like love, isn't it? You don't have to be in love, but you can love somebody, but as soon as that loyalty is gone and the trust is gone, goes the love.
Absolutely.
Where it was warm in the heart, it turns to ice.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's the warmth in the heart, isn't it? And then when somebody lies to you, or as you say, breaks your trust, then
I mean, sometimes it's sort of, you're loyal to something, and that person or that group or that organization does something that you disagree with, and it's like apostasy, where you move away. To you, it's not a betrayal. In a sense, they're the ones that have betrayed your faith in them. So sometimes it swings and roundabouts, and it's interpretation. So, and sometimes you outgrow things, and it's not a deliberate disloyalty or treason or treachery. It's just something that you evolve and you move on and leave things behind you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, it's time for us to say goodbye. So Darren, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the couch today. It's been absolutely delightful talking to you, and I'm sure we'll have you back to talk about your forthcoming books as well.
Please do.
And your forthcoming film contracts.
Oh yes. Well, if either of you want to be small characters in the film, I'll see what I can do.
Oh yes.
I want to be a big character.
Right. Well, I'll have to write you into one of my novels.
Yeah. I want to be a queen with flowing garments, and I want to be able to fly.
Just I'll be in it. I'll be in it if I can have a dragon.
Well, the second one of the medieval fantasies has lots of dragons in it, so you could ride on a dragon.
Oh yes. Sold. I love dragons. My favourite. I'd love to have a dragon. I'll be dangerous. I'll be sitting
Never
right and
And,
centre.
and there's a very sarcastic unicorn in it as well. So if you like unicorns, that's in there.
Yeah, love unicorns. Love unicorns.
Wonderful. Okay, so we'll obviously keep in touch with Darren and watch his progress with great interest, because it's definitely going somewhere. Darren, thanks so much for talking to us. You've been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure and my honour. Thank you.
Oh, and thank you everybody who's tuned in to watch. But until next time, we'll see you.